Does the winding map of our eternal soul stem from mere mortal evolution? Or was it an ancient path already laid into existence by a profound and ancient tragedy? A sacred betrayal etched into the celestial blueprint of the universe. Across the silent waters, the boundary between the living and the eternal gently dissolves into the cooling mist. It is here that the story of a slain king reveals a clear path to the glimmering stars above. Tonight, we will witness the shadow of a brother's jealousy falling across the golden throne, severing the harmonious lineage of the cosmos. Through the tireless devotion of a grieving queen and the courage of an avenging son, the scattered pieces of this broken world would be united once more. This cycle of loss and restoration brought about a great peace, ensuring that the light of justice would forever guide lost spirits through the mystifying darkness of the underworld for generations to come. Ages later, beyond the banks of tall reeds, the horizon is dominated by triangular mountains of stone that seem to hold the weight of the heavens upon their peaks. What if these silent monuments were not born from the toil of mortal hands alone, but were instead the physical echoes of a wisdom whispered by the gods themselves? We look upon the geometric perfection of their heights, sensing the presence of Thoth and Ptah in the alignment of every block, the careful measurement of every shadow. The records of the ancients speak of a sacred inheritance, a translation of celestial mathematics that allowed a pharaoh to anchor infinity to the shifting sands. Even the great Sphinx remains a sentinel of the cycles, waiting beneath the dunes for a dreamer to hear the plea of the ages. As the hot desert wind carries the scent of ancient dust, we recognize that these structures are not merely ruins, but are the enduring signatures of a universe that never truly forgets the past, no matter how deep. The heavy silence of the plateau morphs into a song of belonging for the mind, a steady pulse that connects the heartbeat of the past to the stillness of this moment. It is a constant reminder that we are all part of the great cycle, drifting through the halls of history where the gods still walk amongst heavy limestone blocks, silent witnesses to the passing of countless ages. Let the stories of the first king and the eternal sands wash over you, carrying the spirit into a timeless dream of the ancient gods of Egypt. What if the very foundations of the human essence were not developed through the slow progression of evolution, but are instead echoes of a divine tragedy that unfolded when gods still walked the banks of the Nile as kings? The journey into the afterlife remains an enigma born of an immortal epic that altered the fabric of reality forever. Before the golden sun first warmed these muddy shores, a vast silence rested heavily upon a formless darkness. Slow ripples of endless water whispered against unformed clay, waiting patiently for a vital spark of celestial awareness to awaken the sleeping earth. From this quiet void emerged a profound belief that the first mortal breath was drawn directly from the holy magic of supreme creators. Some whisper that early men blossomed like fragile lotus flowers, from shining tears weeping from the glowing eye of Ra, falling gently upon the waiting soil. Others murmur how a divine potter named Khnum shaped yielding human limbs upon a spinning clay wheel, mixing warm river mud with an eternal spirit. Still, other voices echo a tale of a supreme artificer named Ptah, who simply spoke these bodily vessels into physical reality through the powerful thought of his infinite mind. Regardless of which celestial hand sculpted their mortal frames, these earliest populations lived in a state of brutal savagery across a wild northern valley. They wandered aimlessly through dense papyrus swamps, without any structured laws, struggling daily to find basic sustenance among tangled aquatic roots. A heavy spiritual darkness clouded their unguided minds, leaving them entirely disconnected from the harmonious rhythm of the cosmos. To lift this struggling race out of deep ignorance, a benevolent deity descended from his starry habitation to rule directly over the green earth. This compassionate sovereign was known to his people as Osiris, arriving not as a distant guardian of resting souls, but as a living king of mortal flesh. He brought the brilliant light of civilization into an otherwise shadowed realm, establishing a peaceful era which later generations would forever revere as the true Golden Age. Guided by his supreme wisdom, wandering tribes finally learned to tame the wild landscape, turning chaotic marshes into ordered fields of rich agricultural loam. The good king showed them how to fashion heavy wooden hoes, teaching them to plant seeds of wheat before a receding flood dried into cracked yellow clay. He introduced strict codes of justice to govern their daily interactions, forever binding humankind to the sacred covenant of the cosmos. He softened their rough animalistic nature with beautiful melodies, instructing them in the peaceful arts of music, so that harmonious songs began to echo softly across flat expanses of cultivated green plains. This foundational era is central to Egyptian mythology, serving as a bright dawn of boundless human potential. It establishes the harmonious reign of Osiris and Isis, demonstrating how divine love could successfully transform the barren wilderness into a lush, vibrant garden of earthly delight. Devoted human subjects lived in absolute reverence of their great ruler, reaping immense and predictable bounties from a generous natural world. Every rural village thrived under his gentle, persistent guidance, trusting completely in the protective shadow cast by his divine royal presence. A magnificent prosperity swept over this united river valley, transforming previously desolate shores into a beautiful sanctuary of mortal flourishing. Yet a dark contrast existed just beyond those borders of emerald vegetation, hovering silently across a barren western ridge. A fierce brother named Set ruled over that endless waste of scorching red sand, embodying the sheer sterile power of prolonged withering drought. He was a force of absolute hostility, a creeping shadow of cosmic chaos, forever jealous of the nourishing moisture flowing through the eastern riverbed. If you are listening to this in the quiet hours of the night, enjoying the video as your thoughts begin to calm and your eyelids grow heavy, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps these stories reach others who are seeking the same relaxing history to enable a restful sleep. If you like, let us know when and where you are joining us from in the comments section. There is something comforting in knowing that, at this very moment, people from around the world are gathering in this same quiet space to rest and relax in the continuance of history. And if you would like uninterrupted sleep and longer versions, those are available to you through the Legends of the Dawn membership. Now, let us return together to an era when the world of the Egyptian gods was in turmoil, and the story that later brought the dawn of one of the most ancient civilizations on Earth was just beginning to take shape. The malicious deity Set took his physical form in violent southern winds, blowing hot, dusty breath over delicate, newly sprouted crops. A gloomy temper consumed his fiery heart as he watched the ever-expanding glory of his beloved sibling. This profound duality between fertile green plains alongside the sterile desert perfectly embodied a sacred, prevalent truth, reflecting the eternal struggle between creation and destruction. He greatly despised the cheerful prosperity of those river settlements, plotting constantly to reclaim the flourishing black earth for his own silent kingdom of complete desolation. Seeking willing accomplices, he gathered 72 silent conspirators in hidden desert caves, whispering of treacherous designs to come. These envious minds quickly formed a dark alliance, dedicated entirely to overthrowing the established celestial order of peaceful rhythmic growth. Together they devised a cunning, methodical strategy to permanently remove the benevolent guiding light from a trusting mortal world. Using precious timber brought from distant northern forests, these unseen rebels fashioned a spectacular wooden chest fit for a king. Every smooth surface was richly ornamented with shining beaten gold, painted with bright inviting colors to cleverly conceal their deeply malicious intent. This deadly box was secretly crafted to match the exact physical measurements of the unsuspecting king. When the season of harvest celebrations finally arrived, Set invited his royal brother to a magnificently lavish evening banquet. Lacking any suspicion of betrayal, Osiris unknowingly entered the grand festive hall, filled entirely with smiling, deceptive traitors. Sweet, fragrant incense drifted heavily through the warm night air, masking the cold, unseen tension of an impending tragedy. The glorious Queen Isis rested quietly in her own distant palace, unaware of the dark, deceptive shadow silently falling over her beloved husband. After numerous courses of rich food were merrily consumed, attendants carried that gleaming wooden container into an illuminated central courtyard. A chorus of loud admiration rose from gathered guests, praising the flawlessly exquisite craftsmanship of its decorated panels. Set watched with calculating, predatory eyes, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to spring his devious trap. Feigning a jovial generosity, this wicked host declared he would give the precious box to whoever could fit perfectly inside it. Various accomplices stepped forward to try their luck, discovering the space to be slightly too long or somewhat too wide. They surrendered their turns with mock disappointment, paving a clear path for their intended victim to accept the fatal challenge. Osiris approached the ornate coffin with a peaceful smile, admiring the smooth polish of its fragrant cedar walls. He lay down willingly within its narrow confines, finding his immortal limbs supported exactly by the measured wooden frame. In that fleeting second of innocent triumph, a monstrous trap was violently sprung by eager waiting hands. Those 72 conspirators rushed forward from shadowed corners, ruthlessly slamming the heavy lid shut upon their defenseless ruler. They drove thick iron nails into the solid wood, ensuring that every seam was sealed tightly with streams of burning molten lead. The glorious founder of human civilization was suddenly cast into a narrow, breathless void where the very atmosphere grew heavy and thin, leaving him to gasp against the weight of absolute stillness as the world above was silenced forever by his own treacherous kin. Moving swiftly under the cloak of midnight, this wicked assembly carried their tragic burden down toward a silent riverbank. They cast the sealed box into dark waters at the northern Tonitic mouth of the sprawling moonlit delta. A gentle current caught that heavy vessel, sweeping it slowly away toward an endless unknown sea. The golden era of peace drifted away with that floating tomb, leaving an awakened humanity to face a sudden terrifying absence. Soft ripples washed quietly against muddy shores, carrying the lingering memory of a fallen king into a distant watery void. Endless stars circled patiently above a sleeping valley, watching the slow descent of the ancient world into a vast unbroken night. The luminous age of order abruptly gave way, scattering shards of terror across a previously tranquil river valley. Heavy winds from the scorching southern desert swept across fertile fields, replacing the benevolent rule of Osiris with overwhelming dread. Early mortals watched helplessly as green shoots withered under the aggressive heat, plunging a fragile civilization back towards its previously savage state. A creeping darkness quickly overtook the brilliant light of civilization, threatening to erase all memory of an ordered human existence. Without a benevolent earthly ruler to guide their hands, helpless farmers watched their crops wither into brittle yellow husks. A sterile desert reclaimed its lost territory, burying cultivated ground under a suffocating blanket of dry red dust. Those cheerful melodies of a former peaceful era faded quickly into a distant memory. A deafening silence descended over mud-brick villages, broken only by the weeping of frightened families. Their magnificent, sweeping prosperity had completely collapsed, leaving a starving nation completely exposed to sudden cosmic wrath. Word of this devastating betrayal soon reached the distant palace of the magnificent goddess of magic, Isis, who rested unaware. A heavy veil of sorrow descended immediately upon her radiant face. Her beloved companion had been cast into a watery void, leaving the royal throne entirely empty under the pale moonlight. Overcome by such vast grief, a once glorious sovereign sheared her shining hair in a traditional gesture of mourning. She cast aside all shimmering silks of royal authority, draping her limbs in dark woven robes of earthly lamentation. The eternal romance between Osiris and Isis seemed violently severed, forcing a lonely widow to wander across the desolate landscape. She abandoned her magnificent palaces in an agonizing display of ultimate loss, offering a physical manifestation of her broken heart. Her tears fell constantly upon the dry earth, mirroring the divine sorrow of a mourning heaven. The once vibrant goddess now resembled a silent shadow, drifting endlessly through the chaotic realm of living men. Isis still possessed an immense celestial power, yet her visionary gaze could not penetrate the watery veil hiding her husband. A sinister spell woven by 72 treacherous conspirators temporarily obscured the divine location of that sunken wooden chest. She was forced to rely upon ordinary mortal senses, walking barefoot across a burning earth. Ancient papyri speak of her desperate pilgrimage through dusty villages alongside muddy banks of the great river. She pursued any lingering trace of a floating coffin, asking every passing stranger for news of a murdered king. Dismissive adult minds remained entirely ignorant of her tragic quest, but an unexpected wisdom flowed freely from a much younger generation. Innocent children playing idly beside water reeds possessed a strange clairvoyance concerning the hidden path of that sacred vessel. Their seemingly simple prattle guided the wandering deity, pointing a sure way toward the immense northern sea. She followed the salty wind beyond familiar sandy borders, stepping wearily upon foreign shores of a distant Syrian land. Ocean currents had carried the sealed coffin far away from the Egyptian delta, tossing it upon restless waves for many moons. A steady tide had finally cast this precious cargo upon a rocky coastline near the ancient port of Byblos. A gentle swell pushed that heavy wooden box into the tangled embrace of a young tamarisk plant. Salt water washed continuously over its beautifully painted surface, unable to erase the divine magic holding it together. Marine creatures revered this passing wooden vessel, guiding it safely through treacherous coastal reefs. A mighty sea recognized the sacred king, delivering his body gently toward the safety of a sheltering foreign beach. Nourished by the divine presence hidden within, this fragile shrub rapidly expanded into a massive, fragrant tree. The remarkable vitality pulsing from its buried immortal core fed those thirsty roots with an unearthly strength. This botanical giant produced a heavy canopy of thick leaves, casting deeply cooling shadows upon the sun-baked shore. A sweet, intoxicating fragrance drifted continuously from its massive trunk, masking the scent of death with the perfume of eternal life. Thick branches completely enveloped the gilded tomb, hiding its silent king deep within a protective layer of living wood. King Melkender of Byblos eventually marveled at the tremendous girth of this towering seaside marvel. He commanded his woodcutters to fell a fragrant trunk, completely unaware of the sacred tragedy resting inside. Strong axes severed its sturdy root, transforming this beautiful coastal tree into a massive wooden pillar for a royal palace. Skilled artisans shaped its majestic timber into an architectural wonder, smoothing its rough bark into polished surface. The natural beauty of this grand support column became a famous centerpiece of the Syrian royal court. A hidden sarcophagus still rested silently within its core, waiting patiently for rescue by the wandering goddess. She arrived shortly after this architectural triumph, exhaustion taking over her divine form as she rested beside the quiet village fountain. Her sorrowful presence attracted the sympathetic gaze of Queen Astarte, who invited this mysterious stranger to enter the grand royal household. Refusing to speak of her own celestial origins, Isis humbly accepted a lowly position as a royal nurse. She cared tenderly for an infant prince, feeding the small child by allowing him to suckle her own divine finger. A potent immortal magic flowed quietly through this simple nourishment, offering the fragile human infant a rare gift of eternal life. During the stillness of night, a disguised goddess sought to burn away all traces of mortal weakness of her tiny charge. She bathed the sleeping babe in a purifying celestial fire, resting his body gently in its luminous flames, while transforming her own body into a dark swallow. Her bird-like form fluttered continuously around the massive wooden pillar, mourning her lost husband hidden within its fragrant core. Suddenly, a terrified Syrian queen interrupted this sacred nocturnal ritual, shrieking at the sight of her son lying amongst the flames. Her sudden panic instantly broke the protective spell, depriving the royal heir of an immortal destiny. A startled Isis immediately resumed her true majestic form, illuminating the dark chamber with an overwhelming celestial radiance. She gently demanded that the great tamarisk pillar be yielded completely into her own hands. Astonished Syrian rulers willingly surrendered their structural masterpiece, watching silently as a mighty goddess cleaved its solid wooden shell. She carefully stripped away its protective outer layer, treating every splinter as a highly venerated object of intense devotion. The fragrant wooden casing was left behind to bless the royal Syrian household, serving as a permanent memorial of her celestial visit. She reclaimed her gilded treasure with a fierce maternal grasp, carrying it back toward her native soil. Avoiding the hostile gaze of a treacherous brother, she transported this silent vessel into a dense, aquatic wilderness. The vast expanse of secluded Egyptian marshes offered a perfect temporary sanctuary for the resting monarch. Dense thickets of green vegetation provided a natural fortress against wandering eyes of hostile spies. Muddy waters formed a protective barrier around a small island, isolating the grieving queen from the chaotic world outside. She sat alone beside a gilded coffin, pouring out her soul in a quiet song of endless sorrow. Tall papyrus reeds provided a humble shelter, allowing her to weep freely over the motionless form of her companion. She was finally able to mourn his passing in peace. Pouring sweet-scented oils over his sealed coffin, she whispered ancient incantations into the still, humid air. But this temporary victory over dark desert forces was tragically destined to be undone by a cruel twist of celestial fate, for Set often traveled through those very same quiet swamps, hunting wild animals under a starry canopy. He drove his chariot across muddy banks, pursuing fierce river boars by the pale illumination of a midnight moon. His fierce hounds scoured the watery terrain, tracking wild prey through thick patches of floating vegetation. A pale lunar glow illuminated the dark landscape, casting long shifting shadows across the muddy floor of a silent swamp. This wicked predator rejoiced in the savage exertion of his midnight sport, completely unaware of the hidden prize resting nearby. During one particular excursion, the pale light revealed a familiar shape resting among tangled green reeds. Set recognized the beautifully painted chest immediately, realizing his rival had returned from his watery grave. A blind fury consumed his jealous heart, driving him to ensure that any influence of Osiris would be forever destroyed. He shattered the sealed lid, casting the remains of the former king out upon the damp floor of a silent marsh. With a heart hardened by ambition, he divided the sacred form of his brother into 14 separate parts, determined to erase every physical trace of his sibling's essence. He sent these fragments drifting toward the far corners of the horizon, scattering them across the vast and varied landscape of Egypt, so they may never be reunited. The malicious deity laughed triumphantly over his hollow victory, believing his absolute dominance was finally secured forever. He rode his chariot back toward the sterile western desert, leaving a shattered golden age behind him. A heavy silence fell across those empty marshes as the very earth seemed to cradle the scattered essence of the beloved king. Some remnants sank deep into muddy riverbeds, while others fell upon dry stretches of barren rock. Dark shadows of an arid desert stretched farther than ever before, creeping ominously toward the fragile center of human civilization. Men forgot their civilized arts, focusing only on their fear of a daily return of the scorching southern wind. The great king now awaited a miraculous intervention, trapped in the silent void between the physical world and the spiritual realm. His fragmented body lay hidden across unknown locations, awaiting a patient regathering. A sorrowful Isis was forced to begin her weary travels all over again, determined to restore the unbreakable cosmic balance. Isis gathered tall stalks of green vegetation growing thickly along muddy banks of a sluggish waterway. She refused to surrender the sacred cosmic balance to the devastating will of sterile desert winds. A deep celestial magic stirred within her mournful heart, promising a miraculous restoration for the shattered earthly king. She wove these slender reeds together with skilled patience, fashioning a light vessel to navigate the treacherous flooded expanse. This simple papyrus boat glided silently across dark pools, carrying her solitary figure through the dense aquatic wilderness. Beneath the murky surface lurked fierce river predators, possessing massive jaws capable of snapping solid timber. Yet these scaly beasts recognized the sacred nature of this woven craft, refusing to attack her fragile floating sanctuary. Instead, they sank respectfully into muddy depths, allowing the grieving goddess to pass unharmed across their watery domain. She drifted slowly through tangles of heavy lotus leaves, searching every shadowed inlet for remnants of her beloved. Watery currents had gently deposited his scattered remnants among thick roots of towering green papyrus stems. She retrieved each precious fragment with an absolute devotion, placing them securely upon the woven deck of her stealthy craft. The heavy burden of her agonizing quest was soon shared by a darkly beautiful sister named Nephthys. This lady of descending shadows offered a comforting embrace, joining the weeping widow upon her lonely reed boat. Together they scoured an endless network of winding channels, recovering the physical foundation of a lost golden age. Their divine mourning also attracted two other mighty celestial beings who descended quietly to those isolated northern swamps. The jackal-headed god Anubis brought his mysterious knowledge of preserving mortal flesh from relentless decay. He was accompanied by a wise ibis-headed deity named Thoth, carrying secret words of infinite celestial power. This silent assembly gathered upon a hidden marshy island, determined to reverse the terrible destruction wrought by Set. Isis stood alongside these powerful allies, pooling their vast celestial knowledge to forge a magnificent miracle. Together, they invented the deeply sacred art of embalming, creating a physical vessel capable of surviving an eternity. Anubis carefully cleansed every recovered fragment of the revered king, washing away all traces of a cruel mutilation. His remnants were methodically bathed in purifying pools of sweet water, anointing them with fragrant oils drawn from distant cedar forests. The rich perfume of crushed myrrh drifted through humid air, masking the heavy scent of earthly corruption. Those divine attendants arranged every purified part into the perfect likeness of a sleeping human form. They bound his resting limbs tightly together, utilizing a seamless cloth woven in 1,000 delicate folds. This endless linen shroud wrapped around the fallen monarch in a brilliant white cocoon, permanently securing his physical entity. This supreme act of supernatural devotion produced an incorruptible body, completely defying all natural laws of earthly decay. This very first mummy became known as the sacred Karast, an anointed figure designed to endure for millions of years. The quiet marshland witnessed a staggering triumph over death, as the resting king lay perfectly preserved upon his wooden bier. During this intricate physical preservation, Thoth whispered potent incantations over every layer of white linen wrapping. These highly sacred verses contained a vast wisdom, destined to become a protective foundation for all future mortal journeys. These spells were recorded within a revered text, known natively as the Chapters of Coming Forth by Day. Generations of future men would later copy these exact magical formulas, burying them alongside their own sleeping relatives. The sacred Book of the Dead offered a safe passage through a dangerous underworld, guided entirely by this original divine triumph. Every spoken spell anchored a fragile human soul, tethering it securely to the path of immortal resurrection. A crowning achievement of this meticulous restoration occurred when the royal head was finally recovered. This most sacred fragment was eventually buried at the holy city of Abydos, establishing a permanent geographical anchor for an entire mythos. The ancient town became a highly venerated center of supreme devotion, drawing endless pilgrims to honor their sleeping lord. Though his physical form was flawlessly reconstructed, the silent mummy remained entirely devoid of animating breath. A cold stillness clung heavily to his anointed limbs, requiring a supreme act of celestial magic to awaken his resting heart. Isis once again transformed her own radiant body into a beautiful hovering bird, spreading her feathered wings over his quiet face. She fluttered gracefully above the motionless chest of her husband, creating a gentle rushing breeze with her beating plumage. This rhythmic fanning generated a vital breath of life, directing a warm current of air into his lungs. She chanted powerful incantations into the shadowy darkness, calling his wandering spirit back to its preserved earthly vessel. Her transcendent love penetrated right through the heavy veil of death, stirring a dormant energy within his cold, sleeping frame. A miraculous spark of vitality temporarily animated his bound limbs, answering the passionate call of his devoted wife. During this fleeting moment of magical resuscitation, she drew his divine essence from him to conceive a child who may carry on his glorious work. This royal lineage was miraculously secured from beyond the gloomy threshold of a grave, defying the absolute finality of mortal breath. Isis sheltered a newly planted seed of immortal light within her own protective womb. But this temporary reawakening could not permanently restore the murdered sovereign to his former throne of the waking world. His spirit could no longer reside among fields of living men. His beautifully preserved Karast belonged entirely to the shadowed realm, waiting below the surface of a sunlit earth. Soon a heavy slumber reclaimed his reconstructed body, forcing his divine soul to seek a different domain of absolute authority. He descended slowly into a vast subterranean region, entering a hidden twilight kingdom known as Amenta. This mysterious underworld offered a majestic new sovereignty, far removed from the scorching heat of the western sands. With this descent, the divine king of early Egypt transformed gloriously into an eternal judge of the dead, seated upon a throne of absolute truth. He became the supreme god of the underworld, ruling over a quiet dimension of resting spirits. His radiant presence illuminated the gloomy abyss, providing a comforting beacon for all future souls traveling through the long night. Within a grand hall of two truths, he established a flawless scale to measure the righteousness of all arriving mortals. Every human heart was weighed carefully against a feather of cosmic balance, determining the final destination for all traveling spirits. He offered a merciful sanctuary to those who lived justly, rewarding an honest earthly existence with a beautiful immortal peace. This tale of treachery inadvertently opened a miraculous gateway for ordinary men to achieve everlasting life. The path cleared by his own divine resurrection became a heavily trodden road for endless generations of dreaming mortals. By copying his sacred embalming rituals, every common laborer could eventually hope to share in his glorious eternal kingdom. A quiet serenity settled over those hidden northern marshes, replacing the violent chaos of a shattered golden age. Gentle ripples of water washed against tall green reeds, singing soft lullabies to the resting earth. A heavy magic lingered peacefully in the cool night air, promising a bright dawn after the long season of lamentation. Far below the sleeping surface of the ancient river valley, where the world of the living gives way to the eternal deep, the resurrected king closed his eyes upon a throne of perfect justice. His endless realm of tranquil spirits operates with the slow, unbroken precision of the turning stars. A gentle slumber rested upon the hidden underworld, while a different kind of magic blossomed above. Deep within her mortal womb, a grieving widow carried the precious spark of celestial light. She sought a secure refuge tucked far away from the relentlessly scorching breath of the desert winds. Dense thickets of floating papyrus stretched across a northern landscape near the ancient settlement of Chemis. These watery marshes offered the perfect sanctuary for a hunted queen seeking the protection of absolute isolation. Their tall green reeds formed an impenetrable woven fortress against all hostile searching eyes. Murky channels wound silently between small islands of dark yielding mud. Scaly reptiles gliding beneath the quiet surface once again recognized a divine presence entering their aquatic realm. They offered a silent allegiance to Isis as she prepared her secretive haven. She fashioned a humble shelter from gathered lotus stalks, alongside fragrant river herbs. This fragile cradle floated gently upon the calm expanse of shallow dark water. A heavy canopy of broad leaves provided cooling shadows from the blazing afternoon sun. Here within a verdant isolation she brought forth the golden child, A radiant infant emerged from darkness to illuminate a shaded, watery sanctuary. He was the fragile embodiment of a new cosmic hope for the entire waiting world. Egyptian mythology reveres this tiny boy as a returning light destined to restore the broken balance. His birth represented a quiet triumph following the death of Osiris. Still, this newborn son remained incredibly vulnerable amidst the untamed wilderness. The eternal bond between Osiris and Isis had remained unbroken despite their cruel physical separation. She left her sleeping babe only occasionally to gather edible roots alongside sweet berries growing upon distant banks. She wove powerful spells of protection over his cradle before stepping away into the surrounding marshlands. Her magical incantations formed an invisible shield around her resting infant. She commanded every creature of the land, alongside every swimmer in the water, to spare her vulnerable child. An absolute silence settled over their hidden nest while the tired mother sought basic sustenance. Yet a creeping malice still lingered just beyond those borders of emerald vegetation. Set observed the glowing radiance emanating faintly from the northern delta, recognizing the surviving spark of his hated rival. This force of withering drought could not personally penetrate the magical barrier woven by the celestial queen. Instead, he would summon a creeping emissary of darkness from the barren wasteland of red sand. One venomous scorpion answered the silent call of this malignant desert ruler, its segmented tail twitching with a cold, rhythmic malice in anticipation. Emerging silently from the shifting dunes, this creature fell to the ancient pull of Set's destructive will, its jointed legs clicking softly. 7 scorpions had previously guarded a wandering widow during her long, sorrowful journey. But this newly summoned creature served only a destructive will of absolute chaos, scuttling silently across dry, cracked earth toward the lush green border of the watery domain. Moving effortlessly over floating lily pads and tangled roots, it evaded every protective spell, its dark segmented body carrying a venom older than human memory. This agent of malice crept undetected into the shaded cradle of the sleeping golden babe. Its venomous tail struck downward with a sudden, terrifying precision. One deadly sting pierced his delicate, immortal flesh with a burning drop of concentrated desert fire, before retreating quickly into murky depths. A piercing cry of agony shattered the tranquil peace of those green marshes. That sharp wail echoed violently across the flat expanses of the surrounding river valley, carrying with it a devastating message of doom to a foraging mother wandering far away. Isis dropped her gathered food instantly upon the muddy shore. She rushed back through tangled reeds with the frantic desperation of a terrified mortal parent. She pushed aside heavy green stalks with an uncharacteristic clumsy haste, her bare feet splashing heavily through shallow pools of standing water. Sheer stark dread gripped her divine heart in utter terror as she reached her secluded island sanctuary. She found her beautiful boy lying motionless within his woven nest. Every trace of golden radiance had faded entirely from his tiny body. That fiery poison raced violently through the fragile network of his unformed veins. This future avenger of the fallen king lay utterly defeated before his great journey could even begin. Heartbroken, Isis threw her arms wide in a gesture of absolute despair. She lifted her lifeless infant from his cradle with a sudden rush of overwhelming grief. Her weeping face pressed closely against his cooling cheek. Deep, agonizing shrieks of maternal loss erupted from her trembling throat. This sound carried the immense weight of her cosmic sorrow upward into an azure sky. It was a cry so devastating that it shook the very foundation of our visible universe. The staggering volume of her lamentation ascended from the stricken earth, climbing toward the celestial vault where the sun god Ra pursued his eternal passage. So profound was her cry that it seized the massive rhythmic mechanics of heaven, halting the supreme course of his solar vessel dead in its tracks. Time itself hung suspended over the weeping mother, holding her lost child. Absolute silence fell across all creation as the supreme creator listened to her tragic plea. His celestial boat paused directly above their hidden nursery. A blinding ray of pure sunlight pierced downward through the thick canopy of broad leaves. This brilliant illumination revealed the tragic scene unfolding upon the dark, muddy shore below. She demanded a miraculous intervention to save this fragile seed of an unyielding divine love. This dark triumph of Set could not be allowed to extinguish the last remaining hope of all mortal men. Her powerful magical voice compelled the supreme deity to answer her desperate pleas. Deliverance descended on swift wings from the heavens. Through the stagnant air of the delta, a wise scribe of the celestial courts made his rapid descent, cutting through the stillness like a falling star. Thoth, the ibis-headed master of hidden truth, arrived upon that muddy, secluded isle, bearing within his silent form the ancient secrets and supreme authority of the eternal gods. He appeared with a quiet majesty, comforting the weeping goddess in her darkest hour of despair. His tranquil presence helped to ease the frantic terror consuming her broken heart. Thoth spoke with a resonant voice that carried the absolute certainty of eternal life. His commands directed the fiery venom to release its deadly grip upon the resting infant. Each powerful spell began to purge the malicious desert heat, cleansing it from those tiny veins. The scorching poison drew outward, piling upon the dark, damp soil below, before seeping harmlessly away into the depths of the earth. Sweet, cooling relief washed slowly over the resting infant, restoring his golden radiance. Thoth recited ancient formulas establishing a permanent, protective barrier around him. He promised that this miraculous healing would secure the rise of Horus to come, for the young god was destined to grow into a mighty warrior of unmatched strength. Warm, vibrant color returned gradually to his pale cheeks as the steady pulse of his beating heart resumed its rhythmic pace. The sweet fragrance of river lotus filled those tiny lungs once again with refreshing breaths of new life. He opened his bright eyes to gaze upon the exhausted, smiling face of his mother, whose relief was as vast and deep as the river itself. The boy's cosmic destiny was now tethered securely to the living fabric of an unbroken celestial harmony. Our resurrected hero would eventually wield the full majestic power of the Eye of Horus against all forces of darkness. The mighty manjet of Ra resumed its slow, majestic journey across the high blue skies. The turning wheel of planetary seasons began to rotate once more with a flawless precision. Every natural rhythm of the waking world was completely restored to its perfect working order. With the balance of the cosmos mended, forcing the shadow of death to retreat, Thoth ascended once more, returning to his eternal station amongst his celestial crew. He left behind a scene of tender peace, a joyous mother nursing her healthy infant beneath the protective emerald embrace of the shaded canopy. A calm tranquility descended gently over the hidden sanctuary of the northern delta, as the river itself seemed to whisper sweet lullabies to the golden child of hope. This fragile spark of light was now safe from any further creeping malice. Horus would grow steadily amongst tall reeds into a towering pillar of divine strength, learning the ancient wisdom of the natural world from his devoted magical guardian. He absorbed the potent celestial energy flowing freely from her protective embrace. The fragile newborn soul transformed gradually into a robust vessel of divine resilience. Soft cooling breezes drifted through dense aquatic vegetation to soothe his waking hours, while the golden sun warmed his growing limbs with a daily infusion of unearthly vitality. Within the velvet silence of those emerald marshes, a celestial storm was quietly gathering its strength. This secluded nursery, shielded by the swaying papyrus, nurtured the hidden prince as he began to consolidate the tremendous power required to one day reunite a fractured mortal realm. His long and arduous journey toward the final cosmic reckoning had, by a miracle of divine grace, commenced within the humble confines of a muddy cradle. Far to the west, the dark shadow of Set still loomed over the barren expanse of the sleeping valley. The wicked usurper remained blissfully unaware of the healing miracle wrought by Thoth's wisdom, nursing the false belief that the last threat to his absolute dominion had been permanently erased from the living earth. He did not know that beneath the Delta's canopy, his destiny was already being unmade. A deceptive calm now wrapped the entire nation in the tight, shimmering embrace of the desert heat. The mortal population waited in unknowing silence for the sudden breaking of a new golden dawn, unaware that the child growing amidst the reeds was a secret weapon being forged in the patient isolation of the water. He was the promise of a future they could not yet see, a restoration of the light that had been stolen away. The death of Osiris was no longer a final defeat, but a necessary step toward an ultimate cosmic renewal. The tiny, vulnerable infant matured steadily into a powerful adult warrior, preparing to reclaim his stolen inheritance. The rise of Horus became an undeniable cosmic reality, as he mastered ancient martial arts within his watery sanctuary. During those long, silent nights, the goddess of magic continued to weave powerful spells of hidden protection around his growing limbs. Meanwhile, the spirit of his father guided his growing intellect, whispering secret strategies of divine warfare. Osiris shared a vast subterranean wisdom to prepare his eager son for the inevitable battle against gathering forces of darkness. Horus absorbed this ancient knowledge with a fierce dedication which burned deeply within his immortal breast. He learned how to command shifting winds and master the ability to strike with the blinding speed of a diving falcon. His physical muscles hardened into unyielding cords of tremendous power capable of wielding heavy weapons forged from solid iron. Rumor of this living heir eventually reached loyal mortal settlements stretching along the fertile river valley. Ordinary men remembered the harmonious golden age of Osiris and Isis with a deep, abiding reverence. They eagerly abandoned their heavy wooden plows, forming a vast, human army marching proudly alongside their young deity. These brave farmers left their quiet villages to march behind the floating banners of a newly rising leader. Their bare feet beat a steady rhythmic pulse against the dusty soil of a renewed nation. They trusted completely in the divine magic flowing from their chosen commander to shield them from a withering desert heat. This united force of celestial beings alongside mortal men advanced resolutely toward the barren western ridge. They carried shining weapons forged from rare metals brought from distant southern mountains. A fierce determination filled every beating heart, as they sought to permanently erase the oppressive shadow which had taken hold of their land for so long. Set perceived this approaching storm of righteous vengeance, blowing swiftly across his desolate red sands. This entity of darkness gathered his own monstrous army to defend his stolen throne. Terrible agents of cosmic chaos were summoned from hidden desert caves to meet the advancing tide of restorative justice. Realizing his ground forces needed a supreme celestial vantage point, our young avenger initiated a breathtaking physical transformation. he shed his human likeness to become a magnificent, multicolored winged disk, ascending rapidly into a bright azure sky. Great feathers of gold blending with lapis lazuli stretched outward, to cast a protective shadow over his marching legions. From this immense height, he tracked the shifting movements of hostile desert troops maneuvering below. His sweeping gaze penetrated heavy dust clouds, concealing the malicious usurper preparing a deadly ambush on a nearby riverbank. The flying solar disk darted downward with a terrifying velocity, striking the first decisive blow against this malicious force. Seeking refuge from the blinding aerial assault, those wicked followers of Set plunged frantically into the muddy currents. Within those dark waters, they transformed into monstrous crocodiles and massive hippopotami. Their huge scaly tails whipped the calm surface into a chaotic churning foam of muddy white spray. Fierce waves crashed violently against the painted hull of the sacred solar vessel, carrying our divine avenger. Set's army snapped their massive jaws, attempting to splinter its solid cedar planks into floating debris. The murky water churned with the sudden explosive violence of this desperate aquatic ambush. A specialized group of celestial metalworker blacksmiths called Mesenti quickly took to the surrounding water to defend their sailing vessel. These loyal followers of Horus grasped heavy iron lances attached to long coils of thick metal chains. They stood firmly upon the wooden decks, waiting patiently for a precise moment to attack. Sparks of celestial fire seemed to fly from their metal weapons as they defended the floating sanctuary of light. Their coordinated strikes fell in a perfect unison, matching the steady beating of a hidden cosmic drum. These fearless craftsmen formed an impenetrable wall of physical strength against the rising tide of demonic fury. The chaos commenced as heavy chains whistled through humid river air. Sharp iron harpoons pierced thick reptilian armor with a methodical precision, their dark, monstrous bodies sinking motionlessly into deep, muddy pools. With every victory, the men came closer to securing safe passage for their floating sanctuary. Blood stained the chaotic waters of the foaming river as these divine craftsmen systematically eliminated their enemies. Every thrown spear found a lethal mark among snapping jaws hiding beneath the disturbed surface. Any immediate threat to the sacred solar vessel was entirely neutralized by their unwavering martial discipline. With his aquatic army utterly decimated, an enraged Set emerged from the tangled thicket of river reeds, assuming the terrifying shape of a roaring serpent intertwined with a gigantic red hippopotamus. He charged blindly towards the descending winged disk, with jaws open wide to consume the radiant light of heaven. An earth-shaking collision echoed across the trembling valley as these two eternal enemies finally collided in direct physical combat. The golden hawk struck downward with an irresistible momentum, shattering the massive jaw of his cruel adversary. He overthrew the red beast upon a trampled, muddy shore, binding his heavy limbs with unbreakable links of cold iron. During this vicious final struggle, the desperate god managed to tear away one luminous eye from his winged conqueror. Thoth descended swiftly from his starry vault to recover this precious stolen light from the bleeding grip of darkness. The wise scribe restored perfect vision to the triumphant hero. Before a bout, Set was dragged before the celestial tribunal. An assembly of ancient deities looked down upon this wicked usurper, shackled in chains, kneeling helplessly in wet river mud. They formally stripped Set of all temporal authority over the green world he had so violently ravaged. The destruction of the Golden Age had officially been avenged, as a divine pantheon joyfully recognized Horus as the true surviving heir of the betrayed king. the triumphant avenger reclaimed his rightful earthly throne, uniting those divided lands once again under a single peaceful rule. With his divine guidance, the delicate balance between the fertile black earth and barren red sand was renewed. A symphony of joy erupted from mortal settlements as the heavy shroud of sweltering heat finally dissolved into the morning light. Yet one final sublime act of filial devotion remained incomplete, the quest to secure a lasting peace for his slumbering father. Descending into the hallowed silence of the Duat, Horus bore the radiant recovered eye within his open palm, a beacon of celestial light in the eternal gloom. He approached the silent, mummified form of his predecessor to perform the ultimate magical ceremony of loving restoration. With sacred instruments of iron, the young god performed the hallowed esoteric ritual known as the opening of the mouth, an ancient rite to unseal the silence of the grave. He gently parted those motionless lips and offered the eye of Horus for his father to consume. In that sublime moment, the spark of life flickered anew, restoring the breath of the heavens and the power of speech to the king who had dwelt within the shadows for so long. In accordance with the ritual, he gently touched those sealed eyelids with a cold metal blade to reawaken an eternal spiritual vision. A gentle pressure against his silent throat removed every lingering trace of former paralysis. This highly esoteric practice set a permanent foundation for all future funerary rites within Egyptian mythology. The great king's cold sleeping frame was immediately animated by the warm, vital energy flowing directly from this luminous, celestial offering. Osiris rose majestically from his wooden bier, now fully empowered to govern the endless domain of resting spirits. He took his permanent seat as an eternal Egyptian god of the underworld to dispense absolute justice upon his hidden throne. With Set securely chained and Osiris restored, an ultimate cosmic harmony known as Math settled gently over a waking universe. This flawless divine order dictated a perfect rhythmic turning of seasons for both gods, as well as mortal men. The terrifying era of prolonged destruction faded completely into the quiet dawn of endless, predictable growth. A steady stream of human souls could now safely journey toward a magnificent hall of two truths waiting below. They faced a fair judgment overseen by a resurrected sovereign, who carefully weighed every mortal heart against a feather of absolute truth. This precise eternal balance is beautifully detailed in an ancient papyrus of Ani for all future generations to study. Those ancient scribes painted vivid scenes of this underworld tribunal upon long rolls of delicate scrolls. They depicted a watchful god of wisdom, recording every spoken word, as trembling souls confessed their earthly deeds. A perfect cosmic scale determined the final destination for every wandering traveler seeking an eternal resting place. The extensive treasury of magical incantations contained in the sacred Book of the Dead, serving as a celestial atlas for wandering souls, charting a steady course through the starlit shadows of the valley toward a boundless, peaceful haven of everlasting rest. Magnificent images of the great winged disk were carved deeply over the heavy stone doors of every sacred temple, like silent architectural guardians keeping a vigilant watch over slumbering cities. Its vibrant, outstretched plumage offers a permanent visual promise of an unbreakable cosmic security. Bathed in the pale luminescence of a rising silver moon, those painted feathers seem to radiate a soft, protective warmth over the resting earth, while the memory of divine conflict fades entirely into a quiet, comforting assurance that a divine harmony had been reinstated. Endless constellations still rotate with flawless precision above the remnants of these ancient temples, mapping a secure, brilliantly illuminated pathway toward a magnificent celestial paradise, and granting every mortal mind the reassurance of immortality. The sacred records softly whisper a deeply comforting proposal that the mysterious existence of the human soul is not a fragile accident of nature, but a luminous, lingering echo of the divine inheritance, forged in an era when celestial kings still walked the green riverbanks of ancient Egypt. With the cosmic balance restored and a glorious immortality secured for all, humanity could now surrender their own heavy thoughts to the slow, mesmerizing current of the invisible river, floating peacefully under the watchful gaze of divine celestial guides. As the echoes of the great battle fade, and the Nile continues the rhythmic pulsing calm of thousands of years of life, we find ourselves standing on the same silted banks where history first took root. The story of Osiris and Horus is not merely a ghost of the past, but a living current that flows through the present moment. By leaning in to listen, you have taken your place in a chain of remembrance that stretches back 5,000 years, ensuring that the light of the cosmos continues to cast its protective shadow over the world. The ancients understood that every sunset is a promise of a sunrise, and every ending is a quiet preparation for a new beginning. Just as the souls of old navigated the starlit shadows of the Duat toward a peaceful haven, we too navigate the complexities of our own time, guided by the same pursuit of balance and truth. The harmony of Ma'at remains the steady heartbeat of the universe, a silent drum that continues to beat beneath the noise of our modern lives. As you prepare for sleep, let the weight of these ages settle over you like the soft, protective warmth of gilded feathers. Know that you carry within you a luminous, lingering echo of that divine inheritance, a spark that was forged when gods and men walked the green riverbanks together. You are part of this continuity. Your breath is a small part of the great celestial respiration that has animated kings and farmers alike across the vast treasury of time. Allow your thoughts to drift like the sacred solar vessel upon a mirror-still river. The scrolls are rolled tight, the temple doors are guarded, and the scales are in perfect balance. Under the watchful gaze of the eternal constellations, you can safely surrender to the stillness, floating peacefully toward your own horizon of rejuvenating rest. As the heavy gates of the underworld stand guard, the soul of the first king fulfills his eternal reign over shadowy depths. A profound silence settles over the valley. The map of the spirit has been drawn, the path through the Hall of Truths is now clear, and the light of Osiris serves as a steady beacon for every wandering traveler seeking the peace of the reeds. Yet, the ancients understood that a celestial order must be mirrored upon the shifting earthly sands, if the memory of the divine was to survive the turning of the great cycles. Beyond the reach of the river's flood, a new kind of magic began to stir, one that favored the cold precision of the mind over the fiery passions of the heart. The masters of creation turned their gaze from the order of the cosmos to the infrastructure of the earth, breathing the secrets of the universe into the ears of eager mortals. They offered the gift of arithmetic and the skill of engineering, teaching mortal hands to capture the infinite within the finite, and to anchor the weight of the heavens into the very marrow of the world. We now turn our eyes toward those soaring peaks where the divine blueprints were first unrolled beneath the desert sun. Here, the determination of the spirit blurs into the labor of blocks and chisels, as a line of visionary rulers seeks to build a horizon that will never crumble, a sanctuary where the gods may walk among men once more. What if the towering pyramids of the Giza plateau were not born from mere mortal minds, but were instead a profound inheritance of knowledge handed down by celestial beings from a sky that has long since shifted in the sands of time. Beneath a burning sun, the great river winds through valleys of rich loam, a fertile soil holding the perfect balance of moisture and sustenance. Deep within this landscape, the ancient papyri speak of an era when divine entities walked among men to establish cosmic balance across a sleeping earth. Long before any mortal ruler claimed dominion over these green marshes, there existed a primeval epoch known to its people as Zep Tepi. Generations of priests recorded that their massive monuments were not human inventions, but were flawless reflections of a heavenly architecture given to them intact. They believed these divine secrets were guarded by the legendary followers of Horus, a mysterious council of ancient kings who ruled before the dawn of recorded time. These early rulers were known as the Horshisu, keepers of a deep memory from an age when immortal gods mingled freely with a fragile early humanity. They preserved exact instructions for every possible aspect of civilized life, hiding this knowledge within the quiet currents of subterranean waters. It was an epoch where a vast, latent cosmos remained hushed beneath the scorched crust, yearning for the flicker of awareness to breathe life into the void. Before a single block of limestone was quarried from a desert cliff, a vast silence rested heavily upon the flat plains of the northern delta. There were no towering shrines to break the endless horizon, only a gentle lapping of sweet fresh water against soft, muddy banks. The warm air hung heavily over untamed land, carrying the faint, mineral perfume of sun-baked clay. Out of those shadowy beginnings rose Thoth, a lord of divine words, whose form was often depicted with the quiet head of an ibis. He looked deep into the vast expanse of the night sky, charting the slow revolutions of distant stars, carefully measuring out the rhythm of passing seasons. Looking down upon early humanity, this wise deity revealed profound mysteries of geometry, laying down the elementary rules of structural design for all future builders. Men were taught how to draw forms with absolute precision, capturing the fleeting breath of life upon the flat surfaces of white limestone. If you are listening to this in the quiet hours of the night, enjoying the video as your thoughts begin to calm and your eyelids grow heavy, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps these stories reach others who are seeking the same relaxing space to rest. If you like, let us know when and where you are joining us from in the comments section. There is something powerful and comforting in knowing that, at this very moment, people from every corner of the globe are gathering under the same stars to listen to these echoes of the past. And if you would like uninterrupted sleep and longer versions, those are available to you through the Legends of the Dawn membership. Now, let us return together to an era when the sands of Egypt and the life-giving waters of the Nile witnessed the rise of massive pyramids that reached incredible heights that would not be equaled or surpassed for another 3,800 years. The cool logic of arithmetic was gifted to mortal minds, allowing them to measure agricultural fields after the retreating floods had washed away old boundaries. A chaotic wilderness was organized into predictable calculations, perfectly reflecting the flawless turning of planetary spheres in an endless void. He was the ultimate master of measurement, a patron of science who wrote magic formulas upon invisible tablets to govern an ancient world. His spoken decrees mirrored the absolute certainty of shifting constellations, providing a firm foundation for a growing society to flourish in peace. Beneath his watchful gaze, the scattered voices of a young humanity slowly gathered into a single, harmonious song. Beside this lord of wisdom stood Ptah, a creator god of the ancient Egyptian capital Memphis, who became a dedicated patron of all earthly craftsmen. He was considered a divine molder, a supreme architect who built the heavy framework of this universe from the raw elements of an unformed chaos. Sacred records indicate that he shaped the cosmic structure by simply thinking of its form, speaking it into physical existence with his resonant voice. Scribes copying ancient texts understood that every swing of a stone hammer, every scraping cut of a copper saw, was a physical expression of his celestial magic. This divine artificer breathed purpose into unyielding rock, turning barren mountains into a yielding canvas for human devotion. His spirit guided the hands of countless native stonecutters, transforming ordinary labor into a highly sacred act of cosmic maintenance. Because of this profound heritage, the early architects who translated these blueprints into towering stone were revered as something far beyond ordinary men. One such visionary was Imhotep, a masterful sage who raised a massive step pyramid from the shifting dunes of an ancient necropolis. His architectural work was so magnificent that later generations bowed before his memory, believing him to be a literal son of Ptah. He possessed a rare cosmic trait, a supreme intelligence that allowed him to comprehend the sacred parameters of Holy Mahat. His mind was capable of reading the stars, translating the vast geometry of the night sky into simple columns, organizing an earthly calendar for his people. This highly advanced mathematical structure provided the ultimate foundation for all human progress, driving the silent engine of a blooming civilization. Such divine origins of early architecture established a firm belief that true power lay in replicating the heavens upon this earthly plane. Rulers who wished to build houses for a developing world knew they must seek out these pure mathematical proportions, searching for formulas hidden by ancient deities. They looked upon their sprawling deserts not as empty wastes, but as vast slates waiting to receive the perfect stamp of celestial harmony. Every giant block of limestone dragged across the hot sands was a deliberate translation of sacred blueprints holding the universe together. Mortal hands lifted heavy tools without any hesitation, moving with a hypnotic grace that mirrored divinity. The rich smell of burning cedar drifted from high temple platforms, signaling the deep devotion of an earthly sovereign to an unseen creator. Early builders did not view themselves as original creators of their own culture, but rather their steady hands worked tirelessly to preserve magnificent designs handed down from a remote past. They surrendered personal ambitions to become anonymous guardians of a majestic inheritance. Within that quiet surrender lay a kind of peace, a release of self into something far older than any one lifetime. When a ruler sat upon his elevated throne, he became a physical embodiment of the celestial laws that governed an ancient world. He poured clear water over smooth altars, offering the very best of his grain harvest back to the holy creators residing in a distant sky. These slow rituals maintained a vital flow of energy, keeping terrestrial planes securely in alignment with the sacred will of the divine architects. Generations passed while the knowledge of these first cities slumbered deep in the earth, resting peacefully until the turning ages required its guiding light once again. Countless intricate details slept undisturbed, wrapped securely in the protective embrace of a silent desert waiting for a new dawn. Above these sleeping archives, the great rivers continued their slow journey toward the northern sea, washing over banks of rich, fertile clay. As a golden sun descends past the distant horizon, the eternal stars that once directed the original rulers slowly reveal themselves in the darkening sky. The celestial bodies continue their majestic rotation, watching over a sleeping earth with a calm scrutiny that has never faltered. Time drifted away like fine sand on a slow desert breeze, since those first divine architects shared their celestial knowledge with humanity. A powerful ruler named Khufu eventually ascended the elevated throne to command the sprawling green valley. This ambitious monarch began preparing a permanent resting place for his own inevitable departure into an eternal horizon. Earthly designs drafted by mortal hands failed completely to satisfy the deep yearning within his restless royal heart. Conventional structures of sun-baked mud could never adequately capture the sacred resonance of a living cosmos. He sought to build a monument that would perfectly embody the flawless geometry expressed by the divine. This massive tomb was never intended to be a mere container for a breathless body. It was meant to function as a powerful cosmic engine, designed to protect a royal spirit on his mysterious journey toward the imperishable stars. Such an immense undertaking required a mathematical perfection that ordinary human minds simply could not provide. The ancient papyri speak of his intense obsession with finding specific hidden measurements belonging to a legendary sanctuary. This holy structure was known throughout whispered traditions as a sacred dwelling of the divine scribe. Finding such flawless proportions would allow an earthly pharaoh to build a monument capable of piercing the heavy, starry canopy. Legends maintained that these secret rooms held a pure architectural wisdom originating from Thoth himself. This ibis-headed lord of divine words had supposedly hidden his structural formulas deep within a protected landscape. Khufu believed that replicating those exact dimensions was absolutely necessary to maintain the delicate balance of the holy Math. Long shadows stretched slowly across wide limestone courtyards as Khufu rested within his quiet palace walls. Heavy thoughts weighed constantly upon his waking mind while he searched endlessly for those elusive mathematical constants. Royal advisors could offer no practical guidance to satisfy his overwhelming thirst. Into this silent hall stepped a wise prince bearing unexpected news of a living wonder. The royal son Heratata spoke gently of a man possessing rare magic alongside vast ancient knowledge. He told sweeping tales of an isolated sage dwelling far beyond the bustling avenues of the royal residence. This mysterious elder was known to his simple neighbors by the quiet name of Dedi. Scribes recorded his age at 110 years, a miraculous span stretching far beyond normal mortal limits. Despite the vast accumulation of years over his head, he possessed a calm strength born of absolute harmony with the natural world. Whispered stories claimed this venerable man could bind severed life back into the motionless bodies of fallen creatures. Fierce lions of the scorching desert were said to follow his footsteps meekly, like obedient children. Most importantly for a seeking sovereign, rumors suggested he knew exactly where to find those hidden numbers of the divine blueprint. Swift commands echoed through cool painted corridors to bring this ancient master before the waiting monarch. Ships crafted of fragrant cedar wood sailed smoothly down the calm river toward his distant rural home. Prince Heratata traveled personally upon those winding waters to ensure a safe arrival for such a valuable guest. They found the enigmatic sage resting peacefully upon a simple couch of woven palm branches, offering highly respectful greetings. The royal envoy spoke of rich food and lofty honors waiting within a luxurious court of their sovereign. Dedi received their formal invitation calmly, displaying no sudden fear before such intense royal attention. 2 separate boats were carefully prepared to carry his chosen companions beside heavily burdened scrolls of ancient wisdom. gentle northern winds pushed their swelling sails back toward the anxious center of earthly power. Rhythmic splashing from many wooden oars provided a soothing melody during that slow journey home. Entering a vast hall of decorated columns, Dedi stood quietly before the most powerful ruler of men. Tall pillars cast heavy shadows across polished stone floors as Khufu gazed downward upon his aged visitor. A hushed silence settled over the gathered nobles, waiting patiently to hear what hidden truths might soon be spoken. To prove a mastery over hidden forces, a demonstration of quiet magic was performed upon that smooth stone floor. The severed head of a small bird was restored flawlessly to its resting body by a simple, whispered incantation. The creature rose smoothly to its feet, proving that an ancient wisdom truly resided within this humble guest. Leaning forward upon his elevated seat, Pharaoh finally asked if the rumors concerning those secret designs were actually true. He demanded to know whether this simple elder possessed actual blueprints of a divine dwelling. Dedi answered softly that he did not carry these precious numbers within his own mortal mind. Disappointment surely flickered across royal features before a calm voice continued its steady revelation. This aged sage revealed that such sacred plans were resting safely inside a small flint box. That hidden container was buried deep within a particular room of an ancient temple at Heliopolis. Khufu immediately demanded that his new guest retrieve this precious treasure from its dark resting place. A quiet refusal met the royal command, carrying a strange prophecy of things yet to come. Destiny had already chosen another path to deliver those celestial measurements into grasping human hands. He explained that a supreme deity had placed powerful enchantments around that specific chamber. Only a preordained series of events could ever bring those buried secrets back into bright sunlight. This aged master spoke with a gentle certainty that commanded absolute respect from every listening ear. Ancient scrolls dictate that 3 children yet unborn would eventually bring forth this sacred box. These future offspring belonged to a pious woman serving as the dedicated priestess of a powerful sun god. Such unexpected news troubled a sovereign heart, bringing a sudden chill to that warm afternoon air. Dedi offered soothing words to calm the rising storm of internal royal anxiety. He promised that Khufu would rule his full allotted time, followed peacefully by his own direct heirs. Reassured by these comforting visions of stability, a restless monarch seemed to accept his unfolding cosmic fate. But knowing precisely where the divine blueprint rested gave this ambitious builder exactly what he needed to begin. Messages were immediately dispatched across the sun-baked plateau toward that ancient center of worship. Holy scribes holding high authority were instructed to uncover those sacred dimensions without any further delay. Ancient records recounting this magical encounter abruptly break off at this precise moment, leaving a final resolution forever veiled in heavy silence. It cannot be revealed exactly how an ambitious sovereign ultimately circumvented such a strict divine decree to acquire those elusive structural numbers. We only know that learning the true location of this hidden wisdom shifted his entire focus toward the sacred city of a bright sun. While the mysterious flint box remained safely sealed away for future generations, royal architects were no longer wandering blindly in their search. That ancient temple at Heliopolis now stood revealed as an ultimate repository of all celestial geometry. If an earthly ruler could not possess an original document, he could at least extract profound mathematical secrets from those learned priests guarding its resting place. A perfect mathematical foundation was finally ready to be drawn upon smoothed limestone tablets. A quiet thrill of anticipation rushed through the royal court as this supreme knowledge was formally secured. With celestial proportions firmly grasped, a quiet valley prepared to witness an unprecedented transformation. Countless native laborers would soon gather to translate abstract geometry into heavy physical reality. An eternal horizon was about to rise from flat desert plains, perfectly mirroring a flawless heaven. The majestic vision of a balanced machine began taking shape within the brilliant mind of an earthly ruler. Every angled line alongside each ascending corridor would serve as a functional mechanism to guide a royal soul upward to the heavens. This massive structure would act as an immovable anchor against the shifting tide of human forgetfulness. A gentle breeze whispered through rustling palm fronds, carrying faint scents of wet river silt. The great waterway continued its patient journey toward the northern sea, washing softly over banks of rich, fertile clay. Within darkened palace walls, a satisfied king pondered the magnificent blueprint of towering peaks. A divine mandate had been successfully passed from shadowed antiquity into the bright, waking world, setting the stage for a symphony of stone that would outlast all the shifting sands of time. As night deepened over the cooling sands, the foundations of a grand legacy were carefully laid within the heart of the kingdom. Translating that magnificent royal vision into heavy stone required waiting for a specific cosmic rhythm to alter the familiar landscape. A mighty river flowing steadily from distant southern mountains dictated every human movement across those flat northern plains. When dark, swollen waters finally topped their steep mud banks, the ordinary cycle of sowing seeds came to a peaceful pause. Vast stretches of fertile loam became completely engulfed, vanishing slowly beneath a temporary inland sea of muddy water. Small villages became isolated islands surrounded by a mirrored surface which reflected a quiet sky. This annual flood arrived with dark, swollen waters, releasing the massive rural population from their usual daily toil among green agricultural fields. Instead of resting idly while their pastures drank in deep nourishment, these freed farmers answered a profound call. They journeyed toward a high, rocky plateau to begin erecting that envisioned house for eternity. A spectacular army of willing builders gathered along a barren western fringe, numbering between 20 to 30,000 strong men. This vast assembly was not a suffering multitude, driven forward by the cruel crack of a whip. We must look past dark modern legends, ignoring tales of exhausted victims, to see the reality of this enormous effort. These towering monuments were actually raised by highly skilled native craftsmen, working alongside robust tillers of yielding soil. Modern excavations near these pyramids have revealed sprawling brick settlements, where these laborers lived in highly organized comfort. They were recognized as vital contributors to a profoundly sacred task, receiving careful medical attention whenever their limbs were injured. A healthy populace was carefully and deliberately maintained, ensuring enduring strength to sustain an unprecedented effort over many long seasons of diligent creation. A complex ancient society operated smoothly, without any need for stamped coins of silver or gleaming gold. Royal treasuries, managed by careful scribes, compensated these dedicated workers using an older universal currency of wholesome fresh food. Regular wages were measured out abundantly in soft-baked loaves, alongside heavy earthen jars of cool, refreshing beer. This reliable, nourishing diet fueled the immense physical strength required to move solid mountains of unyielding white rock. A deep sense of communal pride flourished strongly among various organized groups dwelling upon the sun-baked plateau. They painted bold identifying names upon hidden limestone blocks, cheerfully calling themselves loyal friends of Khufu as they labored together. This cheerful camaraderie transformed a desolate, barren wilderness into a vibrant city of purposeful activity. Generations of local families worked side by side, passing down the quiet mastery of moving heavy stone from father to son. Their shared labor forged an unbreakable bond of unity, linking a common people directly to the divine eternity of their ruler. When pale morning light broke slowly over eastern cliffs, a sprawling camp awakened to a low, steady hum. Thousands of separate individuals, rising from deep slumber, merged seamlessly into a single functioning organism, directed by the quiet wisdom of experienced local overseers. Heavy wooden sledges were brought forward, ready to carry the burden of massive architectural feats to come. These solid timber frames carried blocks of blinding white limestone, averaging 2 to 3 tons in weight. Giant stones from distant quarries were unloaded smoothly from flat transport barges, moored securely at a flooded valley edge. Teams of strong men attached thick ropes of twisted palm fiber to a sturdy wooden sledge. A profound atmospheric rhythm took hold of the entire landscape as mortal hands gripped these rough cords in absolute physical unison. There was no frantic rushing or chaotic shouting to shatter the majestic calm surrounding the ascension of this grand geometric structure. A slow, steady drumbeat of human exertion began to echo softly, rolling across flat expanses of carefully leveled bedrock. Bare feet planted themselves firmly against a baked yellow earth, finding a secure hold for the tremendous collective pull. The thick woven ropes stretched taut under an immense strain of determined human muscle. Every worker leaned into a heavy harness, trusting completely in the combined strength of group effort, pulling diligently alongside his fellow companions. Thick calluses formed upon the hands that gripped those woven ropes day after day under a bright sun. Each man understood his specific role, a vital contribution within a massive human chain stretching across an entire limestone plateau. A shared purpose united these individuals, transforming thousands of separate minds into one highly focused consciousness. Resonant chanting rose clearly into the warming morning air as leaders called out ancient hauling songs. Every rhythmic syllable dictated a precise moment for maximum tension, turning grueling physical labor into a deeply hypnotic musical performance. The heavy block would shift slowly forward with a deep grinding sigh, yielding inevitably to the focused will of human intent. To ease the massive friction of solid wood against dry ground, careful attendants carried rounded clay pots, walking just ahead of an advancing sledge. They poured continuous streams of pure water directly onto the arid earthen pathway, moistening those dusty tracks. Wet mud quickly formed a slick yielding cushion, allowing these impossibly heavy weights to glide smoothly toward an awaiting construction ramp. This careful pouring of liquid transformed an otherwise impossible physical task, turning it into a beautifully calibrated mechanical process of supreme elegance. The sweet scent of moistened river clay mingled pleasantly with the earthy perfume of crushed limestone dust. Every sensory detail underlined a profound harmony, binding these patient laborers perfectly to their surrounding natural environment. Upward along gently sloping embankments of packed earth, these great stones marched steadily toward an empty blue sky. The pulling team leaned forward with a hypnotic grace, moving together like slow-turning gears within a vast cosmic engine. Their synchronized physical efforts built a permanent staircase, allowing a royal soul to eventually ascend toward an immortal starry heaven. This rhythmic motion became a familiar, comforting presence, persisting throughout a long season of monumental construction. Every passing hour was measured by a steady creeping progress of white stone across a golden landscape. Men found a quiet satisfaction in this shared exertion, knowing deeply within themselves that their collective strength was building an eternal legacy. Countless workers did not question the staggering weight of an artificial mountain, which they were helping to so carefully construct. They simply followed the rhythmic cadence of their companions, pulling one block after another in an endless flow of persistence. The entire wide plateau vibrated with a quiet hum, amplifying the steady sound of this silent human machine, operating at its full capacity. Master masons stood ready at higher elevations, waiting patiently to receive an arriving block with an absolute, uncompromising precision. They guided heavy masses into their final permanent resting place, fitting jointed edges so tightly that a single ray of sunlight could not penetrate its microscopic seam. Every perfectly placed limestone block stood as a silent witness to the supreme organizational mastery of early Egyptian engineers. They successfully channeled the raw physical power of an entire population without ever breaking the gentle spirit of a working man. A peaceful discipline prevailed completely over the surrounding chaos, turning a barren desert landscape previously devoid of life into an ordered, majestic temple of pure mathematics. Long months of summer flooding eventually began to recede, drawing muddy brown waters slowly back into a shrinking central riverbed. The season of intense monumental building gently wound down, closing quietly as damp, fertile fields reappeared across an awakening valley floor. The great army of craftsmen prepared to return to their usual agricultural duties, leaving behind a visibly higher monument gleaming under a warm sun. These tired laborers walked away with deeply satisfied hearts, knowing with certainty that their temporary toil had secured a vital divine balance. Their immense collective physical exertion had permanently shaped the geographic destiny of a rapidly blossoming ancient civilization. The towering geometric silhouette of an unfinished pyramid stood proudly, serving as a glorious physical testament to their unyielding communal devotion. As a late afternoon light turned a dusty limestone plateau to brilliant shades of burning gold, a deep, profound stillness descended. Rhythmic, repetitive chants of strong hauling teams faded softly, drifting away into a distant memory of a fading working day. Heavy wooden sledges rested quietly upon dried tracks of river mud, waiting patiently for a next yearly cycle of massive construction to begin. Long purple shadows stretched cruel across abandoned stone quarries, offering a highly soothing respite to the western heat. A soft evening breeze drifted in from a distant northern sea, gently carrying away the lingering white dust of intense human industry. The massive, synchronized heartbeat of a gathered nation finally slowed down, resting quietly in preparation for another day of monumental building. With the breaking of a new dawn over the vast settlements, a gently swelling tide of labor would resume its steady pace. While the staggering scale of thousands of dedicated men is enough to leave the mind breathless all its own, a deeper wonder awaits in the degree of microscopic precision utilized in this grand undertaking. Beyond the sheer force of such a great workforce, we find a world where brute strength yields to the mesmerizing touch of the master craftsman. Each heavy block of pure material was meticulously fashioned to adorn the waiting monument. Patient craftsmen shaped these bright stones with absolute perfection, ensuring no dark shadows will break a continuous shining surface. When placed tightly together upon a towering slope, They form an impenetrable casing that resembles a seamless sheet of polished metal. This brilliant white armor is carefully designed to shield an eternal royal resting place. It protects the ancient inner chambers from the harsh, biting winds of an encroaching western desert. Master craftsmen guide the gleaming blocks into their resting places, displaying a supreme architectural mastery. So perfectly are the heavy borders matched together that not even a thumbnail could slip between its joining edges. A vast artificial mountain is thus sealed behind a seamless curtain of white stone, reflecting the dazzling sunlight across a fertile valley. Such an immense undertaking required a mathematical perfection that still confounds modern minds. A vast foundation was leveled with an error of less than 1 inch across a sweeping expanse of solid rock. The 4 immense faces point flawlessly toward the absolute cardinal directions of a starry heaven. Corner angles were squared to a fraction of a single degree, proving absolute mastery over profound geometric laws. A base unit was deliberately calculated to represent a perfect circle struck by a soaring height as its radius, revealing an exact knowledge of the divine mathematical constant known as pi. This encoded mathematics transformed a mountain of stone into a silent repository of advanced cosmic wisdom. Ancient architects aligned a descending internal corridor directly with a fixed polar star. They pointed this long observation tube toward a glowing celestial anchor known as a draconis. A royal soul could look upward through this dark stone shaft to find a perfect heavenly paradise. Deep within the massive monument, builders constructed a sacred chamber using enormous blocks of red granite brought from distant southern quarries. These heavy slabs were ground flat with such astonishing accuracy that their errors measured less than the thickness of a visiting card. The joints between them were rendered practically invisible, creating a sealed room of absolute physical perfection. Looking upon such flawless geometry naturally awakens a profound curiosity regarding the ancient tools used to achieve it. Modern observers often stand bewildered before smooth inner corridors, fashioned from unyielding granite or hard black diorite. It seems impossible that such stubborn materials could yield so beautifully to early craftsmen holding simple implements of soft metal. Certain scholars from a previous century frequently speculated about lost magical technologies. They proposed that the early Egyptian builders must have employed highly advanced mechanical devices or possessed cutting points set with precious jewels. Other romantic theories suggested that a forgotten earthly empire had left behind mysterious machinery, capable of slicing solid rock like soft river clay. Modern archaeological consensus agrees on a much simpler reality, pointing toward a deeply mesmerizing method born of unhurried persistence. The true secret of this majestic architecture lay in the perfect marriage of human patience with a steady application of natural elements. The slow, hypnotic scraping echoed steadily across sunlit limestone courtyards. Great teams of laborers pulled long copper saws back, then pushed them forward, moving with a rhythmic swaying grace. Many of these massive flat blades could have measured up to 9 feet in length, requiring the coordinated strength of several men to operate smoothly. The true cutting power does not reside within the soft metallic edge itself. Attentive assistants constantly poured fine, wet quartz sand directly into a narrowing groove so that the heavy abrasive grains could bite deeply into the resistant rock. Through infinite patience, this simple mixture ground through the hardest granite, transforming a punishing task into a graceful harmony of constant motion. The song of the copper saw is a steady, raspy breathing, drifting continuously over the busy plateau. Every backward stroke carries away an invisible fraction of hard stone, guided by a quiet devotion to a divine blueprint. Hour after hour, this soothing friction carries on, cutting flawless straight lines through blocks that weigh countless tons. Beyond those sweeping movements of long saws, a hollow, humming rotation drifts from isolated workshop corners. Craftsmen spin heavy tubular drills of copper, guiding their downward path by piling more wet sand around the turning shaft. These cylindrical instruments sink gradually into dark stone blocks, leaving distinct spiral grooves carved permanently along their vertical inner walls. A turning tool slices cleanly through hard quartz with an astonishing speed that defies modern expectations. Every cutting point sinks into the solid granite at a steady rate, ploughing out a helical path without any flinching or jumping. A copper tube holds those abrasive grains of sand, pressing them downward in a perfect circle to hollow out deep, heavy bowls. Master carvers sit quietly above their work, spinning a weighted wooden shaft with a practiced ease that never falters. They hollow out massive granite sarcophagi by sinking continuous rows of these remarkable tubular hulls. They even craft delicate vessels of black diorite, grinding them down on simple lathes until the vertical walls are incredibly thin. Every smooth surface achieved by these patient methods brings a grand royal vision closer to its ultimate fulfillment. A silent machine of human devotion operates flawlessly year after year, slowly completing an artificial mountain of sacred mathematics. The great tomb finally stands ready under an azure sky, prepared to outlast the mortal hands that so carefully shaped its stones. Such incredible feats stand as a quiet testament to a profound dedication dwelling within the ancient human mind. This staggering capability was viewed by those very workers as divine knowledge, handed down directly from the celestial gods to shape a chaotic world. An entire society operated under a firm belief that these architectural rules were gifted to them by supreme beings. Thoth and Ptah had provided sacred mathematics, while mortal hands simply supplied the necessary physical motion to implement them. Every polished slab of diorite became a physical manifestation of a celestial order, brought into reality through a soft grinding of wet sand. The profound beauty of this monumental perfection is found in the slow, deliberate process of its making. No spell or fierce magic was needed to build a house for eternity, only the relentless, steady rhythm of human devotion. Surrendering to the vast expanse of time, these laborers never hurried their copper tools, but allowed the quiet persistence of natural forces to carve a path toward their inevitable destiny. When the great artificial mountain of Khufu finally stood complete, a towering shadow fell across an awakening valley. This massive geometric anchor successfully secured a divine order for a passing generation. The royal overseer eventually closed his eyes in peaceful rest, surrendering his earthly throne to his chosen descendants. Following a sacred mathematical tradition, his successors Khafre and Menkaure continued a vast symphony of stone. They commanded their own legions of willing craftsmen to rise up from the barren western plateau. Two more magnificent peaks gradually ascended toward a bright, cloudless sky, completing the majestic triad of royal tombs. These three monumental structures cast a wondrous terrestrial reflection, mirroring distant heavenly constellations. Within deep hidden chambers, mortal remains of powerful monarchs were said to have been carefully sealed away in the dark. A heavy silence settled over their resting forms, while outside a busy world continued its slow revolutions. During this immense era of construction, a massive knoll of natural limestone remained projecting above a golden quarry. master architects serving Khafre chose not to cut this stubborn rock away into ordinary building blocks. Instead, they envisioned a profound spiritual purpose for this unyielding core of solid earth. Patient sculptors swarmed over a rough outcropping, chipping away heavy layers with simple copper tools. In a grand display of artistic mastery, they painstakingly transformed the rugged limestone outcropping into a breathtaking celestial guardian, a great lion whose noble resemblance radiated an aura of eternal, transcendent glory. Upon this formidable form they carved a majestic human head, bearing the serene portrait of their sovereign ruler, Pharaoh Khafre. This colossal hybrid creature was designed to serve as a divine guardian for the entire sacred necropolis. Gazing eternally toward a distant eastern horizon, it watched for the first bright spark of a rising sun. Its stony face held a calm, eternal certainty, steadfastly waiting for the magnificent, golden resurrection of the blinding celestial body. Ancient priests revered this massive sculpture as the image of a fearsome god, keeping watch over the slow, unfolding passage of time. Resting heavily upon massive paws, the great guardian guided celestial winds with an unmoving gaze. This solid monument merged the fierce strength of a desert predator with the quiet wisdom of a human king. Long centuries drifted past these quiet monuments, bringing profound changes to a fertile valley below. A majestic era of early pyramid builders gradually faded into a misty realm of distant memory. Sprawling settlements of native craftsmen emptied out, leaving a stony wilderness devoid of human life. The rhythmic chanting of hauling songs no longer echoed across smoothly paved causeways. The steady humming of tubular drills died away, replaced by an absolute stillness of a resting earth. The pulse of human devotion, once a vibrant machine of stone and sweat, finally slowed to a standstill, surrendering the plateau to a deep, unshakable peace. That grand symphony of monumental engineering faded completely into an endless whisper of blowing sand. Vast limestone courtyards that once witnessed magnificent religious festivals became quiet dunes of shifting gold. The original purpose of these towering structures was slowly obscured by the heavy veil of passing centuries. Without vigilant caretakers to maintain a sacred enclosure, a hungry desert began to reclaim its lost territory. Golden sands crept slowly forward upon soft winds, spilling quietly over heavy boundary walls. Minute grains of crushed quartz accumulated patiently, drifting like a slow, silent tide against pale limestone casings. The towering feline guardian could not escape this relentless advance of the Golden Sea. Century after century, sweeping dunes piled higher around its resting paws. The great Sphinx was slowly swallowed by the rising desert, until only its stoic face remained to watch over the wasteland, its colossal frame surrendering to the heavy embrace of the sand. Over 1,000 years passed like a single fleeting breath in a vast cosmic lifespan. In this time, a new era of powerful monarchs rose to command the ancient river valley, ruling during a glorious time known as a Younger Kingdom. To these later generations, the silent plateau of Giza was already a deeply mysterious antiquity. A vigorous young prince named Thutmose rode his chariot into the haunting shadow of these ancient peaks. He often traveled through a region known as the Valley of Gazelles, practicing his archery upon a vast open plain. His swift horses pulled a rattling car across rolling dunes, pursuing wild lions far from a bustling royal court. His youthful body rejoiced in the vigorous exertion of a royal hunt across an open expanse. He drove his chariot with remarkable skill, guiding swift steeds that seemed to run faster than the rushing wind. 2 trusted followers accompanied him, sharing in the reverent solitude of a sun-baked wilderness. During one particular excursion, the fierce heat of an African noon settled heavily upon a dry landscape. The blinding sun beat down mercilessly, exhausting the youthful hunter along with his panting steeds. He sought any available shelter from the punishing glare, turning his chariot toward those towering relics of a forgotten past. The massive, projecting head of the buried guardian cast a deep and velvety shadow across the furnace of a baking earth. Within this cool, dark sanctuary, the relentless aggression of the desert sun was momentarily quelled, offering a brief reprieve to any soul weary enough to seek its shelter. Tutmosis halted his horses, stepping down to rest beside the gigantic neck of this silent stone watcher. He stretched his tired limbs upon a soft yielding sand, surrendering to a profound physical weariness. As the royal prince closed his eyes, a heavy trance descended swiftly upon his resting mind. The boundary between waking reality and a spirit world dissolved completely, opening a gateway for divine communication. He found himself standing before a living embodiment of that very God, whose shadow now sheltered him. Then the great deity broke through the silence of the ages with a deeply resonant voice, revealing himself as Harmachis, the Lord of the Eternal Sun. With the tender grace of a celestial father, he reached across the veil of sleep, his words shimmering with divine radiance. Yet a shadow of sorrow touched his glorious form as he softly conveyed his grief that the restless, shifting desert sands had risen in a choking tide, threatening to eclipse the transcendent glory of his image entirely. He lamented that his heavy limbs were bound, trapped entirely beneath the crushing weight of golden dust. The sacred sanctuary had been abandoned, leaving his divine embodiment vulnerable to the creeping tide of a hostile wilderness, with a voice like the sighing of 1,000 desert winds. He implored the resting prince to liberate his form from this suffocating mantle of silt, that the proper majesty of his earthly dwelling might once more be unveiled to the light of the heavens. In exchange for this monumental act of devotion, the buried god offered a magnificent reward. He promised that Tutmosis would soon wear the double crown of a united nation, ruling over all living men. A vast kingdom stretching from a northern sea to southern mountains would be placed securely in his mortal hands. This divine decree whispered of rich food from the 2 lands, which would be given freely to this young protector. Meanwhile, an abundant tribute from all foreign countries would flow steadily into the royal treasury for many long years. This divine decree whispered of a reign overflowing with bounty, for abundant tributes from all foreign settlements would flow steadily to the royal treasury for many long years to come. Tutmosis pictured the wealth of distant nations, such as the gold of Punt and the cedar of Lebanon, heaped at the feet of the great Sphinx. For his piety, he would not merely be a king, but the beloved son of the morning, whose treasury would never empty so long as the sands were kept at bay. Tutmosis absorbed these sacred revelations with absolute clarity, tucking the divine message away in the private sanctuary of his thoughts. He knew that an ancient prophecy had been spoken directly into his quiet soul under a blazing sun. He accepted the massive burden of restoring the buried sanctuary, embracing his cosmic duty. This astonishing vision faded quietly as a young prince awoke. He was deeply moved by such a celestial encounter. He carried his divine promise securely in his heart, vowing to fulfill the sacred request. A mysterious silence of the surrounding desert seemed to vibrate with a lingering echo of that holy voice. When the time arrived, a new sovereign commanded his workers to remove the heavy golden shroud. Thousands of baskets of sand were carried away, freeing the lion's majestic body from its long imprisonment. A substantial slab of pink granite was erected between its two massive paws, permanently recording the king's miraculous dream for all future generations. The ancient bond between supreme deities and their earthly caretakers had been magnificently restored as the suffocating shroud was cast aside. With the heavy golden sands finally relinquished to the winds, the great Sphinx turned its eternal gaze once more toward the Nile Valley. This liberation from the desert's crushing embrace signaled a return to cosmic equilibrium, where the divine breath of the heavens could again flow freely through the lungs of a restored kingdom. This resurrected guardian still stands proudly alongside the three towering pyramids of the Giza plateau, proving a profound ability to outlast the shifting sands of time, as it waited for future generations to uncover its vast mysteries. This sprawling necropolis remained intact after thousands of forgotten years, serving as an ultimate testament to an unyielding, mortal endurance. Looking upon such flawless geometry invokes whispers of the long journey from sacred blueprints to a patient rhythm of wet sand grinding against hard stone. A monumental triumph of pure mathematics was forged through the collective heartbeats of willing workers, uniting an entire nation in peaceful creation. The definitive origin of such geometric perfection remains veiled in the mists of antiquity, blurring the lines between the capabilities of humble mortal minds and the divine guidance of a celestial hand. Perhaps these stone giants were merely the embodiment of a sacred inheritance from the sky above, or a silent wisdom salvaged from an epoch far older than the first scratch of a scribe's reed. In the presence of such overwhelming scale, the line between human sweat and divine inspiration blurs into a singular, eternal mystery. Whether crafted by ordinary human ingenuity or gifted by unseen gods, every perfectly placed block anchors this fragile earthly realm, tethering it securely to the steady rotation of distant planets. Purple shadows stretch across the cooling desert plateau. A profound stillness settles gently over these silent guardians. A darkening canopy of eternal stars emerges slowly above the sleeping river to carry away all the restless thoughts of a waking world. Cool desert air drifts softly across ancient stones, carrying with it the quiet hush of a realm at peace. Distant constellations turn slowly in their endless cosmic procession, their silver light falling like a tender blessing upon the resting sands. Somewhere far below the silent dunes, the great river continues its patient journey, whispering an ancient lullaby across vast spans of time. And as you listen, you join that silent, patient procession, sharing the past, weaving your own quiet breath into the vast tapestry of human memory. In this stillness, the distance between then and now dissolves, leaving only the timeless heartbeat of a story that refuses to end. As the final echoes of these ancient chronicles fade into the stillness, we find ourselves standing on the quiet banks of a river that has flowed through the dreams of humanity for thousands of years. The grand battles between shadow and light, and the monumental stones raised toward the heavens, are more than just distant memories. They are the foundations of a story that we are still writing to this very day. In sharing these tales, we bridge the vast gulf of time, joining a long line of souls who have looked up at the same constellations and sought the same sense of peace and purpose. We see in these divine struggles and architectural marvels a mirror of our own human journey, the desire to protect what we love, to build something that lasts. and to find order amidst the shifting sands of life. Whether it was a god reclaiming a throne, or a master builder aligning a monument to the stars, the heart of the story remains the same: a search for harmony and a light that never truly goes out. These are not just myths of gold and stone, but deeply human echoes of our own hopes, forged in an era when the divine felt as close as the morning mist on the water. The great monuments that still stand as silent guardians over the desert are a testament to this enduring spirit, their heavy stones holding the heat of 1,000 suns, even as the moon begins its ascent. From the first inspired designs to the grand dynasties that followed, each era added its own verse to this long rhythmic poem of existence. As the world around us grows quiet, we can feel the weight of that continuity, a comforting assurance that we are all part of a stable, predictable growth that transcends the brief flicker of a single lifetime. As you prepare to surrender to a restorative sleep, imagine the landscape of the past settling into a soft, indigo blue twilight. The vivid colors of the temple walls and the sharp edges of the iron lances soften in the mind's eye, dissolving into a gentle, protective warmth. The scales of the universe are in perfect balance, and the luminous, lingering echo of history provides a secure, brilliantly illuminated pathway for your own thoughts to wander. Let the slow, mesmerizing current of time carry you now, floating peacefully under a vast canopy of stars that have watched over every king and every dreamer since the beginning. Breathe deeply, let the world drift away for a time, and step into the quiet dawn of a deep rest.